Hello, I'm Rena, and welcome to Biopic, a podcast story. This is a podcast where we dissect the good, bad, ugly, and absurd of this specific genre of motion picture, the biopic. If you want to learn more about us, our scoring system, and how we choose movies, please check out our special introductory episode, Introduction, Who Are We, and What Are We Doing? This is not one of our regularly scheduled weekly podcasts. It's an extra that we're throwing out there with some bits that we cut from the past several episodes for time and because they were digressive or repetitive. We normally spend over 2 hours recording episodes that wind up being somewhere between 60 and 80 minutes long, so some fun stuff winds up getting cut. Here, in a mostly random mix, are some outtakes that we deemed to be irrelevant host banter. These outtakes are from episode 10, Cobb, and episode 11, Evita. We'll be sharing the extended take of our reactions to Eva Peron's corpse, some extra criticisms of Robert Wuhl's performance in Cobb, a look at insider trading laws and the history of Coca-Cola in cans, and more. Again, this is all a bunch of random host banter clips and sounds without context, like we are having a conversation in non sequiturs. So if this is your first time listening, you should probably download one of our regular episodes or our introduction episode to get a better sense of what we're all about. Enjoy, and thank you for spending some of your time with us.
So I think that this is unforgivable in the same vein that, like your Stephen Class or who's that monster, Jason Blair or James Fry, creating a story where you feel like it's serving an essential truth, or if it's just to mess with people, or you just think it makes a story better. That's not reporting. That's dishonest. It's fiction. This is all fiction, and he's presenting it like it's true. It's unforgivable.
Stump lied to make himself look cool.
It's a treason to your source. I don't.
So you have grounds to accuse me of having no appreciation for Ty Cobb's contributions to sports ball. I enjoy collectively referring to the majority of sports as sports ball, but the truth is that when we get to 42 and Pride of the Yankees, I will probably use the correct specific word, baseball, in reference to the form of sports ball played by Jackie Robinson and Lou Gehrig, because they both deserve the adulation we continue to give them. Sarah, I have a name, and I want you to tell me if you think they could have done a better job than Robert Wuhl. Judge Reinhold.
Yes, absolutely. He's a very serious, or he gives a good comic, tragic performance in Fast Times at Ridgemont High that I think dictates that he could have pulled it off. As I said, the dog from Air Bud, I would have preferred to see in this role. Because all of these two-hander scenes, and there's about 6,000 of them between Wuhl and Tommy Lee Jones. Like, Wuhl is so outmatched. And because, as I said, he has two settings, they feel very repetitive. They do not move forward. They do not show progression of his character in any way. And he's really pleased with himself because he keeps telling us what a great journalist he is. Which I think we've, in the up top of this, demonstrated that he is not a great journalist. And we find out that Cobb used to set out to hurt his opponents by sharpening his cleats, which is something that has been disputed. He was a very physical player, but that's just not true.
We see flashbacks and cuts to Tommy Lee Jones playing Ty Cobb during his years in Major League Baseball, but Tommy Lee Jones does not look young enough to be playing any sport professionally in any of these scenes. Even if it is supposed to be the year that Ty Cobb retired, TLJ still looks at least a decade too old. It's just the face he has. The guy probably looked 55 as soon as he was 20. I can't think of a single picture of him where he looks young. And he's 15 years older here than he was in Coal Miner's Daughter.
Yeah.
But around here, at approximately the 20-minute mark, we run into what I had thought would become this episode's equivalent of the fake-looking Cracker Jack box wannabe emerald earrings from Bessie, which is when Cobb gives Stump a stock tip to buy Coca-Cola because it is coming out in cans, and Stump shrugs it off. My immediate reaction was, you fucking idiot. If you are some ink-stained wretch and a board member of Coca-Cola, a blue chip stock, tells you to buy stock in that company, buy stock in that company. I did look it up and I discovered that in 1960, Coca-Cola was not a blue chip stock. It had been removed from the Dow Jones Industrial Average in 1935 and did not re-enter it till 1987. But it was still an iconic brand with near total recognition. And then I thought, well, maybe Cobb is trying to implicate Stump in insider trading so that he'll have one up on him. But I then looked it up and found out that Coke in cans was released in 1960 and had been tested as early as 1955. So far as I know, it's only insider trading if the thing that the board member is telling you is something that has not been released to the public by a press release or general knowledge. And then I thought maybe I should go look up what the insider trading laws were in the twilight of the Eisenhower administration. And then I thought, I have gone too far down this rabbit hole. It didn't wind up being the emerald earrings equivalent. I sort of forgot about it while watching the rest of this trash fire.
I think you have the laws right. Let's table this for the time being, but that's an interesting rabbit hole you went down there. And I was very interested to see where it was going to end because you're here tonight. So it had to end at some point. So I'm guessing though that like what made you forget about it was that TLJ is acting for two in this scene because Robert Wuhl is sitting there with this blank expression on his face while he is yelling and he is angrily taking his meds and says things like, it's been 2 years since I got my pecker up in the air. And Wuhl's just like, huh. And at this point I noted,
in terms of meds, at one point in the scene, TLJ injects himself with what will take to be some form of opioid, but what he does is, after saying, this stuff will kill you, he fills the syringe and stabs himself directly in the stomach with the needle, which is not how you inject an intravenous drug. I've never seen it done that way on film. We just watched Gia last week. Who was the consultant on this? And wouldn't poking yourself directly in the belly with the needle add all sorts of problems? I don't get it.
Yeah, it was confusing. It was unclear what he was sticking into his body at that moment, but he was just Yosemite salmon all over the place. And he was past 9 in this scene. He was trying so hard to like get something out of Robert Wuhl. And at this point I noted there's a scene right after this where Robert Wuhl talks about how he likes to go on walks to get away from Cobb. And he goes outside and upon re-entering the house, he is such a bad actor that he cannot walk back into a room convincingly. Like his like playing of being cold is so terrible. I was like, oh my God, this is how bad this is. He's like, woo! And I was like, really? Really? No one was available. Just this guy. What are we doing? Sorry. So Ty Cobb wants to go to Reno because he's horny, even though, as I mentioned, it's been 2 years since he got his pecker up in the air. And they drive off so recklessly. And first they wreck Ty Cobb's car. And then they're both in Robert Wuhl's car driving down a hill. I'm not going to belabor this. It just goes on and on. And same. I will give the movie moderate credit for kind of defying a lot of the biopickery that we have discussed in the past in terms of just some of the tropey things that happen. No trope Navajo on this film, but we go into how his mom murdered his father. She was maybe cheating on his dad. I think we find out ultimately, like, according to Al Stump. So who knows, did any of this even happen? Did a dinosaur murder his dad? I don't know. I can't believe anything that I'm seeing.
Yeah, and then when that comes up, the accusation that his mom didn't shoot him because she thought he was a prowler, his mom was naked with her lover, and the last thing that Mr. Cobb Sr. saw was his wife's naked lover. I don't care because I know I'm being lied to. It's going through the filter of what Al Stump said. I'm bored because it's a fabrication that happens about an hour later into the film.
Exhausting. We have more shenanigans involving guns getting pulled out places. And it goes on. They continue. It's a road movie with two, like, miserable people. It's the worst car trip.
I started to see that. It starts to feel like a dark parody of the road movie.
Yeah.
Unintentionally.
I was reflecting on how, in your early film classes, you're going to watch The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, which, has the famous line about, print the legend. We've done that here, except for Stump really went with presenting Ty Cobb as a real scumbag. And it's all a missed opportunity. There's an opportunity to present myth versus truth and lies versus reality, inquiring our heroes, villain edits, anything besides the sort of smug, like, look at this asshole. You can look at assholes all the time. Maybe they were trying to do that, but no one here is qualified to make that level of inquiry with any sort of elegance. We get to Cooperstown for a baseball player reunion, which, fine. Where the hell did they get these tuxes? Did they have them in their suitcases?
I noticed that Al Stump's suitcase appeared to be mostly empty. Like, there was space in his suitcase for a huge cardboard box and then a few garments that he'd throw in, but it seems like they're on the road for weeks. So maybe he has a second suitcase that the doormen get for him that we never see. And I'll assume there was space for all of that in the trunk, and their actual luggage was cut for filming time. We also don't see them loading everything up. And then they left Cobb's car on the road. So maybe they stopped in Chicago or some city between Reno and Cooperstown to buy new tuxedos, because whatever Cobb had would have been weather damaged in the car that was probably snowed under. I'm just speculating. They were also on the road longer than Cobb had intended because Stump wants to get him out of Reno so that he can stop potentially getting them in trouble by shooting and saying racist stuff.
I have a really good idea about how he could have stopped him from shooting, which was to take the gun away. But genius journalist probably just didn't occur to him.
There are lots of far-fetched things here. For example, the way that Cobb appears to be on death's door, but then when Stump walks back into the house going, "Brr, I'm cold," he looks all hale and hearty, and he's standing there saying, "Come on, let's go to Reno and get laid," because sometimes people who are dying do have a good day here and there, where just that they're feeling better makes them energized and they want to go out and get something good in one last time. That can happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then asks for the ambulance, and it's really fine acting work that he finds the dignity and humanity of a horrible person pulling himself together to face death. And maybe the scene is so good because Robert Wuhl is passed out.
I agree with you. This scene was really affecting, and you get a lot out of very little in terms of kind of understanding what it must be like to be a sports hero and the immortality that confers on you in your head and in your own delusions, and then to be confronted with your humanity and your mortality. Tommy Lee Jones gets that all across in that moment. Robert Wuhl is right there convincingly, or like Robert Wuhl is right there unconvincingly passed out. Because Buddy can't act.
Wait, Sarah, how do you unconvincingly pass out? Like, you lay on your back?
Like, he's kind of like... Somehow he's dead-eyed with his eyes closed. I don't know. You know, like, if you ever watched America's Next Top Model, like, Tyra's always talking about dead eyes. It's something that lives, like, has, like, serious rent-free real estate in my head is when I think about, like, being dead-eyed. Could have been a great actor. Particularly because, you know, as we said up top, like, clearly Cobb was not necessarily a prince among men in real life, but he wasn't 100% evil. Oh, I mean, I guess, you know, we got the biopic that people thought he deserved, which to me seems really, really fucked up. Maybe the more sort of like complicated, morally ambiguous Ty Cobb, who wasn't a monster, but maybe wasn't the best dude, wouldn't have made for an interesting movie. But I do think that it would have been head and shoulders above this as long as Robert Wuhl wasn't involved. Milo and or Otis, maybe them just switching in and out from scene to scene. You know the Muppet rule?
What about the Muppet rule?
It, like, you cast a movie with one actor and then the rest of it is Muppets. I wouldn't mind a Cobb that has Tommy Lee Jones as Ty Cobb and then the rest of the characters are Muppets.
So, that sounds amazing.
Right?
That sounds really good.
Like Kermit the Frog playing Al Stump.
Yeah. But Kermit is a good guy.
Yeah, that's true. I don't think of Kermit as a particularly morally complex individual. The Muppets are all good. There's just some that are more orderly and some that are more chaotic. I wouldn't mind an Al Stump played by Gonzo.
What about an Al Stump played by Animal?
Yes. Better actor. What about, I'm thinking also, like, at the time, you know, you could have gotten one of the guys from, like, Melrose Place. Andrew Shue. You could have gotten Luke Perry to play. Tommy Lee Jones has this amazing quote about he was working with Jim Carrey on Batman Forever, which at points during this I thought, oh, this is his audition for Two-Face in Batman Forever. Because sometimes he was Batman villain level crazy, like when the car flipped over. But he said to Jim Carrey, I won't sanction your buffoonery. And God bless. Like, Tommy Lee Jones does not suffer fools. I picture him being so annoyed with Robert Wuhl, but who knows? Anyway, I also will shout out to Elliot Goldenthal. The music was really good.
I noticed that. I thought this is really good. My first thought was, is this Danny Elfman?
Yeah, I thought the score was great. I will give it that. That is one decision I approve of.
All right, I'm at.
The actress who did play that part, it depends on how deep you like to go into Irish rock of the mid 1990s, but she's one of the cores. Do you remember them?
No,
Go on, come on, leave me breathless. Da, 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 da. I'll stop.
I know. Sorry, I know from Irish rock. I know the woman who sings the female part of Fairy Tale of New York, and I know Dolores O'Riordan, whose last live performance I saw at my office Christmas party.
I bet you also know Sinead O'Connor.
Oh yeah, I know her, of course.
Depending on where your interest lies in the 90s, that was an up and coming singer um, from the rock band The Course. But she was not really allowed to be in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
We see right away that if Eva Peron is not very popular with some of the leadership. There's this whole sequence here where you're seeing how the military responded to her being around. And this is a really well shot sequence where it is straightforward, a musical, people stopping and singing to the camera. And it's really propulsive and it moves along really nicely. This is the kind of scene you want when you're going to go see a musical. It's not trying to hide that it's a musical. It's not trying to pretend that these people aren't singing. It is right here telling you, buy in, this is a show tune. When I was 18, I went through a period where I thought that maybe I was a martyr. And my father said to me, things don't end well for martyrs. And I realized, oh, I don't actually want to be a martyr. And I wonder if it was kind of the same thing where you get to a certain point and these guys are all like, how do I hang on for as long as possible? And that seems like that must just be so exhausting.
In terms of the idea that she was 26 when she became Mrs. Peron and 33 when she died, there's stories that she may have had a few years lopped off her birth certificate, which would have meant that she may have been the actual age that Madonna was in here when she died. And again, men play characters who are much younger than them with youthing makeup all the time. Doesn't matter. But certainly the records in a poor little town like the one where she grew up weren't great. And
I'm just trying to imagine a political leader returning to the stage. I guess like a good comp might be Nixon, for example, because he was ascendant in the 50s and then he had to sit the bench for a little while and lose some charisma. And just the idea of him returning to office and returning to prominence and saying, I will also be bringing this corpse with me. Because remember how much you liked Pat? She's still with us. She's just in this box now. We're going to put it on display in the Rose Garden. What are we doing?
Well, I was also thinking of like, what if Ivana Trump were kept in state in a glass box in the Capitol instead of being buried on her ex-husband's golf course?
Where I'm sure she always wanted to be. In the year of our Lord 2024, this is possible. That he could decide that he wants to bring a corpse back with him. And then we're all fighting about, everyone's saying, I'm going to bring a corpse too, because we are a nation fully staffed by people who are members of a cult at this point, who will co-sign on whatever bullshit they are told to co-sign on. If he decided to bring a corpse back, with him of his old wife and make his new wife sleep next to that corpse in order to try and capture some of the positive vibes. Who's to say it won't happen? I guess I could talk about this corpse forever.
It's a crazy story, isn't it?
It's just so weird. It's so weird to bring a corpse everywhere with you.
Oh, and make no mistake, the Peronistas wanted that corpse back. It was a thing with them. Like, where's Evita? They wanted that body brought back to look upon and adore.
I have a stupid question. Is Lenin's body still on display?
Honestly, I don't know. I guess we could look that up.
I feel like when Putin passes, we will probably have corpse capers.
Oh, it's actually, if you type in is Lenin's body, ew.
I mean, this is why they buried bin Laden at sea, is because they wanted to avoid the corpse capers.
Yes, it is still on display, and our friends at the Wikipedias say, in 2016, the Russian government reversed its earlier decision and announced it would spend 13 million rubles to preserve Lenin's body. I don't know what 13 million rubles means.
I mean, it could be $13 million or it could be 25.
I don't think the ruble is worth $1, or Putin wouldn't be such an asshole.
How? What is in that body?
Have you looked at the... Well, we don't know. It's now been buried since the 70s.
Oh, okay.
So we don't know, but it's still... I mean, have you looked at pictures of this corpse?
Wait, whose corpse am I looking at? Eva Peron?
Eva Peron's corpse.
Let's see here. I'm just Googling that, which is, I'm sure, not going to get me on a list anywhere. We're so weird in this material world when it comes to bodies. Ugh. Why? Oh, God. This looks like it's paper mache.
What are you looking at?
I don't even know. Maybe that's somebody else's. Why are we like this? What is wrong with us?
Is this what you pulled up?
Yeah. And there's the bronze one. Oh my God, this is so gross. I mean, great job keeping it all intact, but ew.
Sarah?
Ugh. Oh, this is so gross. Can you hear me? I'm back.
What happened?
I don't know.
Where were you?
I was right here, but it looks like my internet disconnected, but it says everything is still recording, so we should be fine. I think Eva Peron's corpse broke my computer.
Yeah. No, he said that it apparently smells like lavender and almonds.
I'm sure it does, but why? Oh, God, that's so gnarly.
Have you looked at the pictures where it just shows the ones where it's like in profile and she's on her back?
Yeah.
Those
are the most upsetting. Okay.
Tune in next week when we'll be talking about Beckett, starring Richard Burton and Peter O'Toole, which I'm looking forward to because I've always been fascinated by the early Plantagenets. The 12th century is a big favorite for research with me.
You just said a bunch of stuff that is in English that I don't have any idea about, so this is going to be a real ride for me as well.
The Plantagenets. I've been fascinated by Eleanor of Occitan since I read a YA novel called A Proud Taste for Scarlet and Miniver by E.L. Konigsberg, who also wrote Mixed Up Files of Mrs. Basil Frankenweiler, as a middle schooler. And then I guess it's a dynasty and an era that I've read at least a book on every year since. And I remember senior year of high school on my exchange trip, seeing Eleanor of Aquitaine's vase in the Louvre, and also there's another piece from her trousseau set in the National Gallery in DC, and it's incredible to me to see something that was owned by a person who lived over 800 years ago, and it's real, and they were real. This is more about her husband and his former bro turned enemy, and we will definitely need you to do the intro, because if I talk about it, I will spend 20 minutes going off on tangents before saying anything about Beckett.
You say Plantagenet to me, and I say, is this a mashup of Little Shop of Horrors and the Rocky Horror Picture Show?
Plantagenet. They were the ruling dynasty of England.
Read books. I don't pronounce things. I wrote a paper about Animal House in college. I'm not smart. Get the knack. Like, this is not my thing.
Yeah.
No,
well, I'm happy
not
to
like
be
smart.
I guess I've been kind of bored with the 20th century, so I'm excited to be throwing myself into the world of Beckett, who was brutally murdered at Canterbury Cathedral, which I visited last year. No, it was 2022. Or was it? No, it was last year.
I am excited to venture into the world of Richard Burton and Peter O'Toole's astonishingly chaotic alcohol abuse.
Oh, yes. So in a little preview, I had found a story by Malcolm McDowell that he told Mark Maron. According to Malcolm McDowell, Peter O'Toole and Richard Burton both said that they were going to go stone cold sober for the filming and then went on a bender right before the end. But I just checked a biography of Peter O'Toole out of New York Public Library, where I read that no, in fact, they were only sober for the first 10 days. And I'll have a little excerpt from this to read you guys next week about how messed up they were for the majority of the filming. And a friend of mine had the suggestion that we try to find the shooting schedule to determine which scenes they were drunk for. But I think I've gleaned enough from 2 pages of this biography that I made a special trip into Manhattan to pick up. And that's better research than like one anecdote told by McDowell that he probably heard over 40 years ago. Oh. I'm just going to miss you guys so much all week. I could keep babbling for this forever.
I mean, me too. Me too. Okay, well, and with that, we're going to close it off. But we love you all.
That was the 3rd edition of Irrelevant Host Banter. If you want to get a better idea of what we're all about, you're probably better off listening to one of our regular episodes. I highly recommend Episode 5, The Conqueror, and Episode 10, Cobb, which I think were our best ones so far. If you liked the show, please leave us a 5-star rating and subscribe to us on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. We are relying on word of mouth to help build the podcast while we work on our web traction. So please tell a friend, or better yet, plural friends, and share us on social media. We hear it helps. Have an excellent weekend, and we hope you'll listen in when our regular episode drops on Tuesday.